Margaret Williams, if Commissioner Williams, if you could go ahead and turn on your video so we can get the meeting started. Great, thank you, Ramiro. Commissioner Maldonado, we can go ahead and get started.
Okay, thank you, Mary. I want to welcome everyone to the Planning Commission meeting of October 26, 2021. If we can all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mary, can you please call roll?
Chair Maldonado,
Present.
Vice Chair Williams,
Present.
Commissioner Ebnetter,
Here.
Commissioner Nugent,
Present.
Commissioner Patel.
Present.
Okay, I'm going to read a little reminder. Due to the physical distancing protocols in place at this time, we continue to encourage public participation remotely. Information on how to provide public comment is explained at the bottom of the published agenda. There are two ways to participate. Join the Zoom meeting by clicking on the link at the top of the agenda. Use the raise your hand button to be called on at the appropriate time. Phone-in participation can be done by calling 408-638-0968 with the conference ID number 859-9338-4685 and the password 859751. When the item of interest is open for consideration, press *9 to raise your hand to be called on. When called upon, press *6 to unmute, state your name, and provide your comments. These options for public comment will remain available until I close the public comment period for that specific item. Mary, do we have any public comments? Any members of the public that want to comment at this time?
Chair Maldonado, I'm just going to give it a minute to see if anybody has public comments. Okay, there does not seem to be any public comments at this point.
Okay, so I'm closing public comments at this time. We'll move on to the next agenda item. Mary, can you list the next agenda item, please?
Item 1, 1919 O'Farrell Apartments project approvals, PA 2020-037.
And I believe we have Summer Smith, Associate Planner, who will be providing a presentation.
Hey, thank you, Chair Maldonado and members of the Planning Commission. Before I begin, I just want to confirm that you can see the presentation and hear me clearly.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Great, thank you. Summer Smith, Associate Planner, here to provide the staff presentation for PA 20-037, 1919 O'Farrell Street Apartments, Agenda Item 1. Okay. The project site, 1919 O'Farrell Street, is a 0.71 acre parcel and is zoned E1-R1/R4, which is the executive park zoning district that's within the residential overlay. The current use is a one-story office building. 2 of the units are vacant and the other 2 are occupied by dentist offices. The adjacent uses around the site include 1 to 4-story office buildings to the west and the south, 1 to 4-story multifamily to the east, which is the Park 20 apartments, and to the south, there's the Court Bella condominiums. State Route 92 is to the north. City Hall is also located to the southwest at the intersection of O'Farrell and 20th. Additionally, the Hayward Park Caltrain station is located to the northeast and is within half a mile of the project site. Here's an existing photo of the site. As you can see, the lot is in the middle of the curve of the cul-de-sac. It has a very narrow width at its frontage, but it's a very deep lot. The project before you proposes to demolish an existing office building and construct a 4-story multifamily apartment building with 49 for-rent units, including 4 affordable units. This project is providing a density of 69 units per acre, which is the maximum density permitted under the zoning code and state density bonus law. The proposed units include a mix of 1, 2, and 3-bedroom units. The project will also provide 64 off-street parking stalls and a 1-level below-grade garage. 39 of the 64 stalls are provided in a semi-automatic puzzle lift system, which allows the residents independent access to and from their parking space through the system's vertical and horizontal arrangement. The project also proposes to remove 11 of the existing 23 on-site trees. 9 of those trees have a diameter of 6 inches or greater and require a permit for removal. The project includes 2 common open spaces, a proposed courtyard, and a grove of redwood trees. The courtyard is proposed to include sitting and dining areas, synthetic turf, and a community promenade, while the grove of redwood trees will contain 8 mature redwood trees. The preliminary design was reviewed by staff, as well as Larry Cannon of Cannon Design Group and the Planning Commission during the preliminary application process. Design recommendations included removing the office component for a 100% residential building, preserving the existing redwood trees on the west side of the site, providing a landscaping strip adjacent to Highway 92, increasing the open space and making it more usable, providing an enclosed lobby, softening the pedestrian entrance by removing the 3 on-street parking spaces and adding different materials and more plantings. And lastly, revising the scale and character of the architectural design to better fit within the context of the street environment and surrounding buildings. Since the January 2020 study session, the applicant has gone through substantial changes. Those include removing the office component for a 100% residential building, preserving the existing redwood trees, which happens to also increase the open space on the site. They've now provided an enclosed lobby. They've softened the pedestrian entrance by removing the on-street parking spaces, and they incorporate a mix of different plantings and walkways, in addition to providing 3 entry points along the community promenade in the courtyard. They've also revised the scale and character of the design to better fit within the design context of the street environment and buildings. They've also added screening of the above ground transformer with a gate and hedge. Here, the west and south elevations of the proposed building. The proposed architectural style is best characterized as a contemporary inspired design based on its use of brick veneer, painted concrete, combination of horizontal cement board siding and vertical standing metal seam siding, and other materials to express various building volumes and heights. The project requires the following approvals: site plan and architectural review, or SPAR approval, for the proposed site plan, building design, and on-site parking as required by the city's zoning code, and for a fence exception to allow fencing in the front yard to exceed the fence height limits as permitted by the city's zoning code. Site development planning application, or Sdpa, approval for the removal of 9 trees that have a diameter greater than 6 inches at 48 inches above grade. As mentioned earlier, the project proposes to remove a total of 11 trees. However, the remaining 2 trees have a diameter less than 6 inches and do not require the site development planning application for removal. Lastly, a determination that the project is exempt from further environmental review as a categorical exemption pursuant to the California Environmental Quality Act guidelines. Now we'll briefly go over a list of adopted local codes and plans that are applicable to this project. The general plan designates this site as executive office high density multifamily, and it is zoned E1-1/R4. The zoning code allows residential uses on the site as long as certain development standards are met. And here's a list of those standards and the project's compliance with them. The list includes height, floor area ratio, and bicycle parking. On the left side of the screen, this is a helpful image showing the proposed bicycle infrastructure improvements in conformance with the bicycle master plan adopted in April of 2020. The plan proposes to construct an overcrossing connecting O'Farrell Street and Bovitt Road via a shared use bicycle and pedestrian path that crosses over State Route 92. The bicycle master plan calls for an overcrossing over State Route 92 that would require a design and feasibility study. At this time, the applicant is not expected to make a financial contribution to that study. Now we'll see the adopted state codes and policies that are applicable to the project. The applicant submitted a preliminary application under the Housing Crisis Act on August 4th, 2020. The Housing Crisis Act prohibits the city from imposing ordinances, policies, and standards adopted after the preliminary application was submitted. The project is also subject to the Housing Accountability Act, which is intended to limit a local government's ability to deny, reduce the density of, or render housing development projects infeasible if objective standards are met. Now we'll get into state density bonus. As mentioned previously, this project is in the residential overlay, which permits a maximum density of 50 units per acre, which yields a subject 0.71 acre site, 36 units. The applicant proposes to devote 11% or 4 of the base 36 units to the very low income category, which entitles the project to a 35% density bonus. With the density bonus, the project results in a total density of 69 units per acre, which permits a maximum of 49 units to be developed. As noted previously, this project is proposing the maximum density allowed under the state density bonus law and zoning code. State density bonus law also allows the applicant to request one incentive/concession, waivers from development standards, and reduced parking standards. The applicant has requested the use of an automated mechanical puzzle list system for 39 of the 64 off-street parking stalls as their incentive or concession. It should be noted that per state density bonus law, the city shall only deny an incentive or concession if it is found that the requested incentive or concession does not result in identifiable and actual cost reductions, if it is contrary to an adopted objective health and safety standard, or is contrary to state or federal law. The applicant is also requesting waivers from municipal code requirements related to setbacks, sidewalk width, and overhead clearance. And the applicant is requesting the reduced parking ratio of 0.5 spaces per unit as provided by the state density code. State density law. Now I'll show you a video that demonstrates exactly how the puzzle list system works. Please note that this list system in the video, a 3-car high by 1-car deep system, is much larger than what is proposed for this location, which is a 1-car high, 1-car deep system. The video is chosen because it's from the same company as the proposed puzzle list system and clearly shows how the system operates. When you're ready to park your vehicle or store it, the driver requests the platform, otherwise known as parking space, by keypad, key fob, or mobile app. The system starts to maneuver by shifting spaces vertically and horizontally that the empty space is presented at grade level. The safety gate opens when the parking space is in position, and the driver pulls their vehicle into the space, engages the parking brake, and shuts off the vehicle. The driver exits the vehicle and initiates the storage command at the keypad or with the key fob or mobile app. Then the safety gate closes and the vehicle is transferred to its specified storage position. It should be noted that these stalls can be designated so that each person has their own individual stall, and it'll always provide their space at the same location at grade. When it's time to retrieve your vehicle, the system works in the reverse order. The driver requests retrieval at the keypad or with the fob or mobile app. The system presents the user's vehicle at the same position of loading. The driver enters, starts vehicle, and drives away, and then the safety gate closes and the system returns to neutral. The system also has several fail and false if mechanisms in place, such as gravity locks, cable guards, sensors that prevent the upper level vehicle from lowering on the car below, overrun systems that cease operation when the vehicle is too large, infrared lasers that can detect movements, as well as security measures that prevent the system from operating should a vehicle be misaligned or simply doesn't fit. As for public input, we received one public inquiry today regarding the completion of a traffic study. That was the only comment that we received. A categorical exemption, class 32 infill development project is recommended for this project pursuant to Sdpa. Qualifications for the exemption requires that the project is consistent with all applicable general plan policies and zoning code regulations, that the site is located within an urban setting on a site less than 5 acres in size. The site has no value as habitat for endangered, rare, or threatened species, and would continue to be served by all utilities and public services. As conditioned, approval of this project would not result in any significant impacts relating to traffic, noise, air quality, or water. A traffic impact analysis was prepared to analyze the project's proposed transportation impacts in accordance with the standard of Sdpa and the general plan. Overall, the TIA concludes that the project is exempt from vehicle miles travel or VMT because it's located within half a mile of the Hayward Park Caltrain station, has a floor area greater than 0.75, and provides no more than the minimum parking required by the city. Okay, the level of service, the TIA also provided an analysis for trip generation and distribution and level of service at the intersection of O'Farrell Street and West 20th Avenue. The TIA concludes in regards to level of service that the studied intersection would not exceed level of service standards in the general plan and no intersection modifications are required. A transportation demand management plan was prepared for the project with the aim of encouraging the use of sustainable forms of transportation. The TDM strategies include a TDM coordinator, new residence packets.
Yeah, it's not live streaming. It's not going out through YouTube. I'm not sure why.
TDM communications, multimodal wayfinding signage, and bike education and workshops.
Excuse me, Summer. I'm just going to interject. This is Mary with the planning secretary. I just wanted to let the participants know that we are not live streaming at this point. We had technical difficulties, but they can still participate via Zoom and through the telephone if they want to participate. The YouTube video isn't working, but we will have a Zoom video of the whole presentation and meeting up after the meeting. And sorry to interrupt.
Okay, thanks, Mary. And just to conclude quickly, staff recommends that the Planning Commission adopt a resolution approving of site plan and architectural review and site development planning applications to allow the development of a new multifamily residential building with 49 units located at 1919 O'Farrell Street, and determine the project is exempt from further environmental review as a categorical exemption based on the findings of approval. That concludes my presentation, and I'm available for any comments or questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Summer, for that presentation. Do the planning commissioners have any questions for staff before we open up to public comments?
Through the chair, I have one question.
Yes.
First, I wanted to thank the staff for an extremely comprehensive staff report. After reading it, I only had one minor question, so it was really helpful in understanding the history of the project. My question is that the staff report mentioned that the applicant will be required to contribute the project's fair share to the feasibility study of the overcrossing over Highway 92. But then during the presentation, you said that at this time, the applicant is not expected to make a financial contribution to the overpass study. I was wondering if you could clarify what the expectation or requirements are from the applicant towards either the study or the overcrossing itself.
Okay, thank you for that question. And I will try to answer as best as I can, but might need Tracy to chime in from Public Works. But so right now there has not been like a budget, a cost estimate, or any type of scoping related to the project. So it wouldn't make sense for the applicant to provide their fair share of the project right now, because there's no criteria for what the fair share would be, nor is there even a budget or a cost estimate for the project at this time. Tracy or Zach, if you wanted to chime in, that'd be great.
Yes, Summer, did an excellent job. Yeah, that is true and correct. Right now, it's just a proposed project. It hasn't been finalized. A study is still needed to be required. But because it hasn't been finalized, Public Works at this time is not going to require the developer to contribute financially to that study at this time.
Would they be required to contribute in the future, either to the study or to the overpass project itself?
No.
Okay.
Through the chair,
Yes.
thank you. Thank you for the presentation, Summer. Very well presented. A couple quick questions. Do we know which or what size of units will be dedicated as the very low cost units?
The specific units and their square footage is not called out in this planning application
Okay,
for the affordable units.
for the affordable units, right? So does the city have any input or leverage on which units will be picked, or is that just, how does that work out?
I believe the applicant will be in charge of deciding which units are affordable, but the city does recommend that they are equally distributed. So it's not only, the small 1-bedrooms that are affordable.
Perfect. Thank you very much. I think one of the requirements for the concessions is that the applicants do not supply more parking than the city minimum. Can you go to the factual data sheet, please?
Okay, 1 second, I'll pull that up. Or I can just pull up this chart. 1 second. 1 second, I might have to reshare this. I'm going to reshare and then share the screen again. Okay, let's see.
No, it's-
And
It says here and on the factual data sheet that I think the minimum is 25 spaces.
that is per state density bonus law.
Right.
It allows a reduced parking ratio, 0.5 stalls per unit.
Right. So I think the code says that they can't propose more than the city minimum. Do you know what the city minimum is?
1 second. It is, I know that the city minimum is more than 64 units. Let me try to find that exact number
Summer,
for
if you don't mind, I could chime in. This is
Okay,
Rocky.
perfect.
The zoning code required parking without a state density bonus for this mix of units would be 92 parking
Perfect.
spaces.
Perfect. Those are my only 2 questions for now. Thank you.
Any other commissioner have any questions?
Yes, through the chair.
Yes.
I've got one, it might be a question for the applicant. But I was curious if the parking lift system can allows for the installation of electric chargers.
Yes, Adam, we have Park Plus, a representative from Park Plus who can answer that question, but I do know that they can be done, but I'll let Nan from Park Plus answer that question.
Yep, this is to the board or to the chair. This is AJ Jenkins with Park Plus. Yes, we do have EV that we can integrate into the semi-automated systems.
Great, thank you. That's all I had.
Thank you, Adam. Anyone else have any questions?
Yeah, I had a minor question actually sort of been answered already, a little bit about the parking minimums. But just to clarify, looking at the data sheet right now, so the 64 stalls includes 39 stalls in the parking system. And there was, I think, one of the waivers was to, or I think it was a waiver, was to request a reduced height. And I assume that's for the reduced height from the standard building code parking space height of probably like 84 inches or something. And so I'm assuming that that's because of those 39 stalls in the automated system. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, and then one other clarification about that system. Is there some accommodation for a power outage in the building or in the region, or emergency situation? What happens if there's a fairly large scale power outage in the area and people need to get their cars out?
Through the chair, AJ Jenkins with Park Plus. You can do backup generators for these systems. It's a very easy connect at the disconnect for each of the modules. And for this particular site, we have 3 different modules with 3 different blocks. So you can easily hook up a permanent or even a temporary generator to bring the systems online. If you don't have a generator or backup generator, you can manually lower the vehicles to the ground by releasing a lock, and it'll fall by gravity. It won't collapse to the ground. It will simply fall with gravity or lower by gravity to the slab level surface. So it's very easy to capture, in other words.
Okay. Great, thank you.
Summer, I do want to apologize. Does the applicant have a presentation they'd like to present? I don't think I asked that before I opened up to commissioner comments.
I do have a presentation, and I can share my screen if you guys are ready for the presentation.
Yes.
Okay. Give me a second here. All right. Everyone see the screen?
Yes.
Okay. Oops. Let me- Thank you again, Summer, for that really comprehensive presentation. I feel like a lot of the data, I'll just kind of skip over so I don't repeat what you've already presented. Members of the Planning Commission, thank you for this opportunity to present to you what we are really excited about presenting to you today. We call our project the Urban Treehouse. I'll explain a little bit more through the presentation. We are excited to bring much needed housing stock into the city of San Mateo, and also bringing affordable housing as well. This is a vicinity map, just indicating again where the project location is at the asterisk. Just real briefly, we did initial studies just to take a look at what the different uses were in the immediate area within a mile or so. We came up with this acronym called STEPS, and it stands for shops and commercial, transit, employment, parks and recreation, along with services and community features. In the more local context, Again, there's a breadth of different uses, if you will, and the acronym we came up with here is breadth. So businesses, we have an office building nearby. There's both commercial office and retail. Residential, there are residential uses in the neighborhood, along with eateries, schools or academics, city hall, district services, along with transit, health and fitness, with 24-hour fitness being right across the highway. And the site itself is influenced by some of that mixture of uses. It's also at the end of a cul-de-sac, sort of the terminus there. So it sort of provides a buffer from noise and traffic in some sense. However, it is also adjacent to the 92 freeway. We tried to really emphasize landscape and open space, really working with these old growth heritage trees as a part of the setting, providing a lot of amenities with the landscape, gathering spaces, dining areas, along with drought tolerant landscape. Really wanted to emphasize this idea of community and how the residents, both in the project and also along with its neighborhood, really find a way to elevate this sense of shared community with spaces and amenities that are beneficial to the residents that will be there. So just a few images to kind of inspire what some of those activities might be. And again, a mixture of 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, and 3-bedroom units are distributed throughout the project. There are some images of projects we've done in the past and just really emphasizing this whole idea of having more contiguous space and lots of light, really making it bike and pedestrian friendly, and then also amenitized landscaping and also shared uses such as recreation clubhouse and dining areas. This is just an overview of the site. Again, 49 units, 64 on-site parking spaces, total open space of almost 14,000 square feet. This diagram kind of indicates where the landscape hardscape is, along with where new planting is planned in the project. And then this gives an idea of the various modes of circulation: pedestrian, bicycle, and vehicular to and from the site. I believe you've seen this landscape plan previously from Summer's presentation. I'm just going to go real quickly through the various floors. This is the ground floor level. Diagrammatically, we have essentially an L-shaped diagram organized around a southern-facing courtyard. The yellow indicates the residential units. The lavender indicates the amenity spaces for the residents. And then sort of this darker beige color indicates circulation, storage, trash chutes, and sort of the utility areas for the residents. This is level 2, 3 and 4 above, stacked right on top. So it's a double loaded corridor for the majority of the straight line along paralleling the 92 freeway, and then in the north-south direction, a small dogleg, 2 elevators, and then a stair at either end with a trash chute that brings down trash and recycling down into a bin at the ground level. And this represents the floor plans of levels 3 and 4 up above. This is the roof plan. On it, we've indicated where the mechanical air conditioning condensers would be located, and then the location of where pre-wired solar PV panels would go. We're required to provide minimum coverage of 15% of the roof area as being pre-wired and also pre-structured for future installation. This is the basement level parking garage with the ramp arriving down at this level right here. We have the 2 elevators over here on the right side and the 2 exit stairs on the left and on the right. It may be difficult to see, but there are 3 puzzle lift modules. There's one right here, one right here, and one right here. Then we have accessible stalls right here and right here. This is the east elevation. This is the south elevation facing the courtyard, a little key plan on the left here. West elevation facing the heritage trees, and then the north elevation facing the 92 highway. And then this is our colors and materials palette, indicating different colors of both the plaster walls, brick veneer, as well as the horizontal cement board siding, along with vertical standing seam, and a few other choices. These are the 2 primary transverse and longitudinal sections cutting through the long side of the building and the short side, and also indicating where you would see the parking lift systems and the pit associated with them. As you can see, it's primarily a single-story garage with a pit only where the mechanical lift systems occur. Lastly, I'll run through just a few perspective views. You can see the heritage trees. This is sort of an aerial view looking at the overall site. This is another aerial view. We are looking in the northwest direction. You can see the existing office building in the background there. This is a street level view from the cul-de-sac at the terminus of O'Farrell. And then this is a shot of the main courtyard looking back or east into the project. And this is sort of a daytime view looking the opposite direction at that main courtyard. And then lastly, this is a kind of a sunset view from Highway 92. Thank you very much for allowing me to present. And we have our entire design team present in case there are any questions.
Thank you for that presentation. Do the commissioners have any questions for the applicants?
Through the chair, I have a question.
Yes. Ms. Patel.
I was curious if you could clarify what the landscape plan is, if any, between the building and Highway 92. I think I recall from the staff report that there was not a landscape plan providing buffer between the building and Highway 92, but some of your perspective shots seem to indicate there were mature trees between the two. So I was just curious if you could clarify.
Yes, we actually have our landscape architect available to address your question. I will start just by saying that if you're referring to these trees, these on the right are the existing heritage trees. There are a number of trees kind of along the embankment between the property and the, it's sort of adjacent to an off-ramp at that point of the 92 highway. So there are some existing trees. We actually kind of cleared up this view just so you could see the building, but there are a number of trees kind of dotted along that embankment. But
Okay,
I'll-
great. That's what I was asking about because there's an angle of the building from the other side where it seems like there's trees behind those apartments. And that's what I was curious about because you can't see them in this angle. Thank you.
Yes, yeah. If you were to drive along there, it may not be that easy to see this building, but for the purposes of presenting, we just made sure to let you see what it would look like.
Any more questions, Ms. Patel?
No, that's it for me. Thank you.
Through the chair, I have a couple of questions,
Yes, John.
or maybe four. For the trip generation, it seemed that I wasn't sure what the number was. I think you had 156 new trip generations. And I was curious how you got to that. I thought there was only 21 total per day. It's a minor question, but I was just curious on how you reached 156 trips a week, additional trips.
I can answer that question. So those numbers were generated through the traffic, the traffic impact analysis using trip generations that are pretty standard in the field. The number that was over 100, that is total trips, whereas the smaller number were just AM and PM peak hour trips, so during rush hour.
Okay, so they weren't part of the study, they're just added to the AM and PMs.
I mean, they were part of the study, but they were really looking at with congestion and delayed circulation times is the AM and PM peak hour times.
Okay. For the power sources for this building, is this an all electric building per city code, or are there going to be gas appliances and units here?
All electric.
All electric, great. Including that fire pit you showed in the exterior, or is that something that's different?
The fire pit, we are going to investigate and research what alternatives there are. It may be difficult to get the same effect of an actual fire pit. So it may be something that provides heat in a radiant fashion, but you may not see a fire. So we're still investigating that. But our goal is to see if there's a way to provide the benefit of a fire pit with an electrified system.
Perfect. I'm looking for the same thing, so I hope you can.
Okay, you'll be the first to know.
So it seemed like you guys did a great job incorporating all the past comments. I really appreciate that. There was only one that I was slightly surprised that you didn't incorporate that Larry Cannon had suggested, which was using some bamboo on the 92 frontage. Is there a reason why you feel that wouldn't be beneficial to the project?
I'm going to have our landscape architect, Kevin Slauson, take this question.
Hello. Really, I think that's a great comment, and we would love to do that. I think the site constraints limited our ability due to the fact that the building is pretty close to the property line. So they would have to be placed within the walkway along the back of the building. And there's little depth there to do that. So it would have to be an above grade elements. And unfortunately, due to fire requirements, we need to keep that whole back area clear for circulation and ladder zone standing, which didn't allow us to put any type of continuous plant material along that back edge.
Okay, thanks for the explanation. It was mentioned that 15% of the roof needs to be pre-wired for solar. Is there any requirements from the city to actually incorporate and activate solar on the roof?
So you're wondering
if there is any requirements from the city to actually activate the solar.
Yeah.
Not that I am aware of this time. Rendell, do you have any additional knowledge on this?
Yeah, through the chair, Rendell from the senior plan, I believe the reach codes only require that it be solar ready.
Okay. Well, I'm sure as it works its way through, that'll be verified. One last question for the applicant. In your garbage area in the basement, you've got the three components of recycling the garbage and the composting areas. How do the tenants manage getting their refuse into those three different areas? Are there chutes? Are there areas on each floor? How is that managed?
Thank you for your question. We have our trash consultant available to answer that question.
Hi, yeah, this is Aileen from American Trash Management. So the residents deposit their trash down the chutes. So we have one chute for waste, one chute for recycling, and we have a Slim Jim container, which is 23 gallons for compost. So the residents divert within their own units and they dump the trash in the designated areas.
Thank you. That's very encouraging to hear. I know it's been a struggle in multi-unit facilities to accommodate and implement the three components with the chutes. The chutes have been something that has been a debate for quite a while, and most people have not gone that route. So thank you for that effort.
Thank you.
Those are my questions, Randall, or for now.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner Nebula. Any other commissioners have any other questions for the applicants?
Yes, I have a few questions. And I mean, I don't know if they should, I could wait until the comment period, but some of them are rhetorical questions maybe, but I think there's specific as well. I actually have a couple landscape questions, and one is about the kind of area that's the big sort of the open field, or what are we calling that? The grassy area, that's the large open space area. Yeah. So I mean, I like that. I think it's great that there's sort of a, you know, big area that can be used exactly as it's shown for kids to run around and that kind of thing. I guess I would like to know, are there any other better solutions than synthetic grass? I'm just not a fan of really what's kind of more plastic in the environment instead of green, like growing things. And, you know, one of the things I like, you know, is Diamondia a choice that's a feasible choice? So I guess I would like to hear if there's anything other than synthetic grass.
There are different options we could explore there. I think the reason we went with synthetic turf, I agree with kind of your sustainable comments there about plastic. We chose the synthetic turf just in mind, keeping the community in mind, the residents, and trying to pick an area that was dry and usable. Sometimes these areas, when they're on structure, they can be overwatered and they can get muddy or patchy if maintenance isn't perfect. And then our fear is that would just discourage use of that area. So by doing the synthetic turf, we would ensure that that stage is set constantly and we're not dependent to the whims of maintenance.
Yeah.
But we could explore alternatives if that was,
yeah,
you know.
Yeah, we just see more and more of it. And I mean, I know lawn is not a great option, of course. But anyway, just, yeah, I would love to find a good solution besides more plastic. Thank you. The other landscape thing, I guess, was, well, maybe that's more of a commentary, I guess. It's just sort of that same question about that, you know, reduced 5-foot setback at the rear and the there is some existing trees along between the freeway and the units, but kind of what options are there? And one of the thoughts I was, just wondering if would it, is it feasible to take a little bit off of each, off the front side, the back side, and that kind of thing. But I don't know, just kind of playing around with the plan in my mind, looking for ways to increase that by even a couple feet, just to get some kind of a buffer zone in the freeway. But
There is a rather dense existing landscape screening along the 92 today.
okay.
And I would agree, if I was along those units, I would not want a perfect view onto the 92, but that with all the existing landscape that's there, and we can't really touch that, that's Caltrans, so that's going to remain.
Okay.
And that will be able to provide that buffer.
Okay. I think I did really look at that. I didn't look at that this time around, but when this project was before us previously, I do know that I took a look at that, and that is the case. So let's see. Oh, the only other comment really or question rather, I'm sorry, was there are now, I think this might be a change from last time, that there's now kind of a grade change from the sidewalk or the cul-de-sac area to the, public, like the public open space area. And I see a set of stairs there. And I think I saw what looks like actually a really long ramp as well. How long is the accessible ramp? Is it like 30 feet? Is it like 50? It looks like it just somehow it looked, I should have, I don't know, scaled
That's
it.
okay. So if I could answer your question, I believe you were maybe alluding to why the finished floor was raised from
Right.
the street.
Yeah.
Great
Yes.
question. So part of the comments that we received during the pre-app process related to comments that were concerned of flooding in the area. And so that was one of the reasons why we raised the finished floor about 3 feet above grade to ensure positive drainage that from the ground floor, if you will. And it actually provided a solution to another comment during the pre-app period, which was the former drive ramp was so long because it had to tuck underneath the building. And so by raising the finished floor of the ground level and thereby also the basement, it reduced the length of the ramp going down all of a sudden.
Yeah.
So it sort of solved two issues at once.
And
With regard to the ramp, it is designed to be an accessible ADA ramp, essentially. So it's at 1 foot of rise is 12 feet of run. So it's approximately 36 feet of incline with a landing in the middle. So it's like 18 and 18 approximately.
Okay. It does kind of create more of an entry to the site that we talked about last time, that we wanted to see some kind of improvement to sort of the entry to kind of coming into the site. So, okay.
Yeah, it's great. The
was,
comments sort of like kind of worked in conjunction to kind of create a better arrival sequence.
yeah. So thank you. I wasn't sure. I couldn't remember if there were stairs before and all of that. So thank you. That's just those are all the things I wanted clarifications on. Thank you.
Through the chair?
Yes.
I'm sorry, Margaret, were you done?
Yes.
Margaret's question on the ramp brings up another question which I had not thought of. Thank you for addressing that, Margaret. Is there any thought of, does this ramp, or the ramp, give the same level of convenience to entrance into this building as the stairs? Meaning, is it longer? Is it more exposed to the elements? Could there be any question that it's not of equal access for people who are not in need of that access ramp.
Mhm.
Right. So your question is regarding the accessible ramp that's
Yeah.
shown right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great question. It essentially passes that test of having fair and equal access. It has the same starting point as
Yeah.
where an able-bodied person would go up the stairs.
Mhm.
And then it also has the same ending point, which is underneath this kind of trellis element here. And they both arrive at a landing point where the secured gate is.
Mhm.
And so an able-bodied person and a person who has need for accessibility both take the same path towards that same exit and entry point. And it just allows a wheelchair to easily follow the ramp down into the public way.
Yeah, I appreciate that. It's just, to me, it seems it leaves a person who might be in a wheelchair exposed to weather conditions at a longer distance than the able person to get up the stairs. I'm not an ADA expert. It's just something that, you know, it kind of catches my attention to see if there's an issue there. That's all. Thanks for the answer.
You're welcome.
Commissioner Nugent, do you have any questions for the applicant?
I think all of my questions have been asked already, so I'm good.
Okay, I do have a question for staff. Understanding that we haven't created any mechanical parking design standards, and the applicant is looking to have mechanical parking standards. When the city does have those standards before, if it has those standards in place or policies in place before this construction, would the applicant have to come back with a redesign if their actual the current application that we approve is not within those standards?
If we had adopted identical and objective health and safety standards that were part of the puzzle list system standards, and they would have to abide by that. However, since it is a concession, we can only deny it if it doesn't result in cost reduction, if there's an objective health and safety issue, or if it's contrary to state and federal codes. So to answer your question, yes, they would if there is a health and safety standard that they were not meeting, they would have to comply with that. But since there's not one, and they submit their pre-application before the city has developed puzzle lift parking standards, and they don't have to apply.
This is Gabrielle Whelan, Assistant City Attorney, and I'd like to follow up on Summer's comments. Since they are providing an affordable unit, they do get to take advantage of the density bonus law and request a waiver from city standards. And so I would characterize the deviation in the stall width as a waiver from the city's parking standards.
Thank you, Gabriela. And Summer, does the commissioner have any other clarifying questions before I open up to public comments?
Through the chair, I have one more question.
Yes.
I just want to thank you, Gabrielle. That was that raised another question for me, which is Summer just mentioned that the only way we can deny that waiver is if it doesn't meet one of the three conditions that she outlined. Must we deny it if it doesn't meet any of those three conditions?
No, the statute sets forth grounds for denying a requested incentive and concession and waiver, and the grounds are the same for both. And so those grounds are just to support the city's decision if the city were to opt to deny the project.
Okay, great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, if commissioners don't have any additional clarifying questions, I'm going to open up for public comments. Mary, we'll give the public some time to raise their hand, and then you can let
Excuse
me
me, Chair Maldonado.
Yes.
At this time, would you prefer that I keep sharing the screen, or would you like me to exit it?
You can exit the screen.
Okay.
Thank you. Mary, do we have any public hands raised for the public comment period? item?
There are no hands raised, Chair Maldonado.
Okay, hearing that there are no public comments, I'm closing public comment and bringing it back to the Planning Commission for additional questions or discussion. Any additional comments or discussion items that the commissioners want to present or discuss?
Through the chair,
Yes, Commissioner Emler.
I'd like to commend this owner and the architect for your great work, turning this property from a minimal use as a low-lying office complex into a beautiful apartment complex. I think it's just a credit to you for thinking outside of the box, working with a difficult site, and pushing forward. So thank you for your efforts, and I hope it turns out well for you.
Any additional comments from any other commissioner?
Yes, through the chair, I
Yes.
kind of want to piggyback on that. I was not on the commission when this was first reviewed. And I just want to say I appreciate seeing the changes that were made based on the commission's input. And I think that you did well by it. And I appreciate what this project turned into. I think it has improved, and it's great to see. So that's all I wanted to say.
I have some comments, a couple comments.
Yes, Commissioner Williams.
Yeah, I'll agree with the past comments here. It's a great project. I really a great presentation. Thank you very much. I was on the commission, and I remember this project from. It doesn't seem like it was that long ago, but I guess it was a long time ago now. We've gone through a lot since then. And at that time, I think a couple of the biggest issues for me were just that whole kind of entrance and what it looked like from the pedestrian or from the sidewalk and cul-de-sac, not necessarily pedestrian, but just that kind of difficulty with how do you get into the site with cars and people and in an attractive, like well-designed way. And so I think you've really really improved it a lot in a like we said, on a difficult site or difficult entrance to the site, really. So I really appreciate that. I do think that the stairs and the ramp and the grade change is really creates a really nice opportunity for kind of a I guess just almost a sense of privacy or just a destination or creates a place for those amenities that you're creating there. So that grade change really works nicely, and I think the accessible ramp is is reasonable given that it meets all the equitable requirements, like the starting point. So that's great. I'm really happy about that. And then I also was a big proponent of wanting to try to maintain some of the many trees that are on the site, and especially since they're like redwood trees and native oak trees and such. And so that barrier between and also because I think the adjacent office building is probably not the most attractive thing. So that barrier to the residential side of those redwood trees is really important to try to maintain. It looks like that's working out pretty well. Although I'm looking at Larry Cannon's report while I have it on screen here as well. And I think his comment was that it looked like there was maybe some accessibility issues, or it might need some refinement in terms of how to access and utilize that space, which is probably tricky because you're working with existing trees and roots and all of that. So I don't know quite how you'll address that. I didn't look at the arborist report. I think there was one in here, but so I do think that would be important to try to address that. The other thing regarding to kind of the site work and kind of Larry Cannon comments was there was a recommendation for them to consider, where was that? I'm not sure if I'm looking at all, I mean, this is in the staff report, but I think these are the current comments from him. This was the fact or the comment that from the entry gate to the elevator lobby, which is, you know, not necessarily where you'd expect it. You might expect it to be more front and center, that it's a bit of a path. And he was recommending perhaps covering it or something. I'm not sure that that's, oops, sorry, I don't know that that's necessary. I don't really agree with that recommendation. I feel like that might get a little bit cluttered, or I guess it would be dependent on if it could be done in a well-designed, simple way. I don't think covering it's particularly necessary, other than Sunday. We don't usually have that much bad weather here that we need it. Sunday when my daughter got married. So anyway, I think that just making clear kind of delineation from the front entry to the site to where the lobby is really important. So I think that was all my comments. Let me just see if there's anything else. Yeah, I think everything else seems like it was pretty well addressed by, I mean, we kind of touched on landscaping along 92, which he touched on, but that seems like there is some. Yeah, those are all my comments. Well, actually, that's not all my comments. I guess I just want to double check. Oh, yeah. Okay. So I know in the materials palette, it shows brick, and I wasn't sure that, I guess, could I see where the brick is again? I couldn't find it quickly when I was looking for it earlier.
Certainly.
I'm always a little bit wary of brick because it's, I don't know. It just seems like it always needs to be like.
We've got a combination of brick veneer materials down at the base of the ground level here. And we aren't thinking the traditional kind of clay brick, but rather sort of an earth tone, and in some areas more of a darker, almost a charcoal, kind of more modern take on the masonry, if you will, giving it sort of a texture to kind of ground the pedestrian level, so to speak, and then allow the materials that rise above on the second floor and above to be feeling a bit more light and airy.
Okay. Thanks for clarifying that, because I saw that in the images and there was reference to brick and I was thinking red clay brick. So yeah, I really like that. I think it provides, like you said, kind of a more solid base feeling to it for that first level. So.
And I can address your other questions regarding, I think the first one was accessibility near the heritage trees. We do have an accessible path that leads towards uses for both able-bodied and the disabled. The areas where the actual heritage trees are, those are not accessible by anyone other than the maintenance staff.
Okay.
And then your question regarding the elevators being sort of at the inside corner knuckle of the project, if you will. We do have access through a lobby that's fairly close to the main gate. And then, so one could go inside and through a corridor and to the elevators during inclement weather.
Sure.
And you don't have to necessarily be outside to get to that arrival point.
Okay, that makes sense. Great. Thank you. I don't have any other questions. I mean, I think it's a great project. It's much improved too. I really appreciate all the hard work to answer our, address our issues from the last time around.
Thank you, Commissioner Woods. Commissioner Patel, do you have any additional comments?
I do not, thank you.
I want to thank the applicants, number one, from going from a different design from the preliminary discussion we had about 18 months ago to what it is now. That you're very open to all of our concerns and issues that we had. concerning the creation of creating more residential, removing commercial. I also want to applaud you for also not just staying within the 1 or 2 bedroom concepts that you had, the units that you had in your preliminary application, but you did a multiple unit size by adding additional 3 bedrooms to this project. So I want to commend you on that and commend you on using the lot size, because it is a unique lot size in its design to be able to provide as much open spaces and try to keep it conformed with the existing housing and commercial buildings that are there as well. So thank you, and I applaud you for listening, taking Larry Cannon's and the commissioner's comments from the preliminary study session and take them and making a great presentation now and a great project. Does any commissioners have any additional discussions or concerns? If not, can I have a motion? Can we put the, Summer, can we put the motion on the screen, please?
Yes, thank you. Rocky, if you can stop sharing, perfect, thank you. Are you guys seeing it okay?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Does any other commissioners want to present a motion?
So I'll make a motion. I would like to make a motion to adopt a resolution approving of the site plan and architectural review and site development planning applications to allow the development of a new multifamily residential building with 49 units located at 19019 O'Farrell Street, and to determine the project exempt from further environmental review as a categorical exemption based on the findings for approval.
I'll second that motion.
For a second, okay. Mary, can we have a voice vote, please?
Chair Maldonado,
Yes.
Vice Chair Williams,
Yes.
Commissioner Ebnetter,
Yes.
Commissioner Nugent,
Yes.
Commissioner Patel.
Yes.
Okay, the motion passes for 5-0. Thank you, all of the individuals assigned to this project. Thank you for answering our questions, and thank you for the great presentation as well.
Thank you, members of the Planning Commission, and thank you, members of staff and city attorney and all the other municipal participants. Appreciate the kind words and thank you for your vote of support.
Thank you. So we'll go to the next item. Mary, can you read the second item?
The item is new business. Item 2, zoning code cleanup amendments.
Okay, and I believe Julia Klein, principal planner, will be presenting this item.
Good evening, commissioners. My name is Julia Klein. I am going to be sharing my presentation. Give me one moment. Is the commissioners, are you able to see my PowerPoint presentation?
Yeah, we are. Yeah.
Great. Okay. So once again, my name is Julia Klein, principal planner with the city, and with the second item this evening is zoning code. These are cleanup amendments. As you'll note from the staff report, there are 5 areas that we are looking to change. And I'll just go ahead and briefly go through them. Most of the information is already contained in the staff report, but for those who may be watching this at home, I'll just go through the items quickly. First off, we are amending 2 definitions in the zoning code. One is removing curb level. This is an outdated definition and should have been removed in 1985 when other sections of the zoning code regarding building height at that time referenced curb level. But then in 1985, the building height definition was changed. and no longer uses curb level as a reference point. And so at this point, we've done a word search. There's no other use of the definition for curb level. So we are proposing to remove that from the definitions. Additionally, staff is proposing to clarify and reorganize how floor area ratio is calculated, particularly in relation to garages, carports, covered structures, and similar structures. And there's a little bit also, there's a bit of reorganization as well, just to help readers read that section of the code. The next part is to chapter 2764, and this has to do with the street and on-site loading zone section, particularly with the current code language for loading zones or loading berths. The code language prohibits an applicant from requesting a site plan and architectural review to basically omit the loading zone requirements from offsite and locate them, on the street. So the code itself doesn't provide an avenue right now. And so that there's a prerequisite language that's in the code that is unclear. And staff is proposing to remove that prerequisite language so that it's much more clear. And also add a title to the table to make clear for applicants that the table applies to both on-street and off-street loading berths. The next group of changes has to do with, these are tree ordinance related changes in two sections of the zoning code. One is the landscape requirements for planning applications, and then the other one is in variance. And the primary purpose of this is to align the zoning code provisions that relate to trees with chapter 13.40 of the Muni Code, which was adopted by the City Council back in May of 2021. So the intention here is to align the zoning code so that it is internally consistent with another chapter of the municipal code. And given that chapter 13.40 was updated to incorporate best practices, industry standards, the work that we're proposing to change with the zoning code would also incorporate those changes. The last part, and this is the Uniform Building Code is referenced in multiple sections in the zoning code. The last time that publication was basically published was in 1997. Certainly, it is no longer used in the development in the building industry. So we are proposing to replace all references to Uniform Building Code with the California Building Code. So that concludes the changes that we are proposing in this cleanup batch. In terms of next steps, we are tentatively scheduled for a City Council meeting in November for the introduction meeting. And that is a public hearing. Following the public hearing, there will be a second reading of the ordinance changes, and then for adoption, and then the code itself will go into effect 30 days after adoption. And that concludes the bulk of the presentation. I wasn't intending to read this, but I wanted to leave the recommendation here for the commissioners. Are there any questions for staff? And prior to that, I just wanted to let you know that we also have Matthew Free, the city's managing arborist, available here if there's any questions, and Alice Chen, the project supervisor, also available here to support if there's any questions.
Thank you, Julia, for the presentation. Does any commissioner have any clarifying questions for Julia or staff concerning the amendment code changes?
I do have a question.
Yes.
Through the chair. The question I had is regarding the floor area amendments to the single family zoning chapter. It'd be 27.04.200. And this has to do with basements. So the section is C6A. I'm sorry, we're not looking at the ordinance right now, but the question I have is there was a new clause that's been added, clause A, where it would be any basement that is a conditioned space would then count as a floor area. is floor area. Is that something that the city council requested, or what is that? Like, what was the impetus for inserting that clause?
If you have conditioned space even today, that's even if it is 100% subterranean basement, that space is already counted as floor area. What happens is the original language in our code was not clear. And so we condition space, that word condition is much more recognized, both by the development community and it's easier to explain to applicants. But it is even within our current definition, if you have a fully conditioned existing basement space, that is considered habitable and is counted toward floor area.
So is that elsewhere in the code, and then it's being added to this particular section?
Yes.
And could I clarify that briefly? I mean, I think when they say condition space for the CBC, the California Building Code, I think they're talking about a required, a minimum number of air changes per hour, which could be, could also be accomplished by windows, right? And also it means that there would need to be heat, but not, I don't think it means air conditioning per the code. I'm not sure if I have that all correct, but these are like normal things that would be required per the building code for like a bedroom in a house, right?
Typically,
that's my understanding of it.
Correct. So if you have a bedroom, if you have, an office, the only kind of spaces that would not count based on a current definition would not count as floor area is if you have like a crawl space. But almost anything else we would count as floor area.
That was my only question.
Any other commissioners have any other clarifying questions?
Through the chair. Thank you for the question, Adam, and the answer, Julia. Does that same criteria apply to commercial buildings?
Commercial buildings, I'm not 100% sure if they have the same condition space requirements. But we have not had any misunderstandings from applicants regarding basement spaces in commercial areas. Most of the time, with the basements definition in the non-R1 section of the floor area definition, we've been able to receive feedback from architects and developers that they understand that basement area, if it is used, it is counted as floor area.
Okay, so I must understand the codes somewhat differently because I believe that there is a project that is currently approved and working its way through to a building permit in downtown that and it's partially subterranean, and that floor area was not counted as part of their project. So I'll have to look back at that, but I'm pretty sure that that's how it had been presented. And I'm curious why residential would be any different than commercial.
So for single family, for residential in general, not just single family, for residential in general, the floor area ratio approach has a different set of exemptions. I think for, and I don't have the section with the commercial, and I'm not familiar with that project that you're speaking to. But in general, the floor area for residential is also tied into parking, and it's based on square footage. For commercial uses, sometimes it's not based on square footage. Sometimes it's based on, if it's an office building or there's certain, let me rephrase that. For office buildings, for example, in commercial areas, the floor area definition itself provides for exemptions. And so if you have mechanical spaces in the basement, if you have, non-occupiable spaces that would generate parking, there are exemptions for commercial uses. There are no exemptions within the existing zoning code for residential uses, and staff with this particular cleanup is not proposing to change the approach. It's more just reorganizing and clarifying the language, based on current practices and current understandings. So we're not proposing to change, policy or if there are existing differences in terms of exemptions between commercial and residential, this particular change is not intended to take away or add to those exemptions. We're maintaining the same approach. For commercial, we're keeping that. We're not proposing any changes to commercial, but for residential, we're also not proposing changes. These are more cleanups, just to help clarify, what the requirements are.
No problem. I was just trying to understand partially the difference between the two code uses and why there would be different criteria. So thank you.
Any other commissioner have any other comments or clarifying questions? I'm sorry.
Through the chair, I have a question.
Yeah.
Same section as Commissioner Nugent's question, but this time for the attic space section. So that's 27.04.200 C5. In the both clean and red line copies that were shared as part of the packet, there was a diagram to help calculate the floor area of attic space. And I was curious if the diagram was being rendered correctly. Because I found that diagram very hard to understand. There was 2 section A's and it wasn't clear how you multiply things together.
There should be only one section A. I agree that this is sort of a plan view diagram. It's not very clear. Staff will be, we've been talking about this internally. We're going to propose a different diagram to supplement this one in the next round. But yeah, we understand this. It's difficult for us to explain to customers as well.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Williams, do you have any questions for staff?
I don't have any questions. I just have a comment that I had to kind of realize, wow, I've been doing this kind of work for a long time, because I thought to myself as I read curb level, I thought, curb level, who's ever heard of that? And then I realized, oh, well, that's because in 1985 this should have been actually taken out. I've never heard of it, in my whole career. Curb level. It's always measured from grade adjacent to the building. So yeah, that's a great cleanup item. And then as well, yeah, the UBC was like, one little volume that long ago became the CBC and is many volumes now. So also a good cleanup item. I totally support those.
Okay, thank you for your questions. Mary, I'm going to open it up to public comment. Mary, do you have any hand raised for public comments at this time?
Chair Maldonado, there are no public comments.
Okay, at this time, I will close public comments and I'll bring it back to the planning commission members to have any other discussion or additional questions you might ask from staff. Okay, if no commissioners have any additional questions or
Actually do, sorry.
yes, okay, Commissioner.
Yeah, this is just a comment generally to the staff. It would be nice to have had included in the packet chapter 13.4 on protected trees, just to see, we're taking out references to tree protection and such in one section. It would be nice to just be able to easily cross-reference in the packet what is being replaced or what is replacing it for me. So just that I would have liked to have seen that. And the other thing is I just wanted to follow up on the basement element. So the reason why that caught my eye is I know working in other municipalities that they will often exempt basements from floor area calculations with respect to, determining what kind, how big of a house you can build. You see this in Atherton where you have major basements that home builders build in order to kind of get around floor area and provide additional living space that doesn't really get seen by other neighbors or noticed. And the reason why this caught my eye is that, I want to make sure that we're just not nonchalantly removing space that could be habitable through, an easy, like a single line in our code where, somebody could actually be living in a space that's, in a basement that, maybe it's a room that, if we institute this new line in the code that wasn't in it before, that would exclude, somebody potentially from living in a basement unit or basement bedroom or something like that, that otherwise could have been built. And generally, it varies from city to city, but most people don't particularly mind what's going on below a house because they can't see it. So I just want to be careful about removing space from, what homeowners might expect or hope to use. Again, it probably is very minor edge cases that it's going to affect, but it just caught my eye, and I wanted to make sure that there was a reason behind it. And I'm still a little bit unconvinced. I'd like to see exactly where the conditioned space is shown in other ordinances. And, I'm curious if anybody has complained about using floor area within a basement, or if this has been an issue in the past.
I think in terms of whether it's counted or not, we haven't necessarily gotten complaints about whether it's counted or not. It's more like, is it counted or not?
Mm-hmm. Okay. I live in a neighborhood where there's houses that are very overcrowded, and every little potential, nice place to live is precious. And, I just want to make sure that we're careful when we add something like that to our code. That probably doesn't affect neighbors, and it could potentially have repercussions for the livability. And again, I imagine that our codes will be re-looked at significantly over the next few years, and I see that this is just a cleanup. But again, it's just one of those things where I want to make sure that there's a reason for this, and that's why I brought it up.
Just to provide one further clarification, this is intended to clarify what has always been counted toward floor area. I think what you're looking at would be more of a policy consideration, which that's something that could be raised in the future, but it's not changing how the city counts basements. It's just clarifying because has been confusion. If there's interest of the commission in seeing a code change that removes basements from being counted, that's definitely a policy discussion that could be had, but that would go beyond what we were looking to achieve with the cleanups before you here tonight.
Sure. No, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Could I just make a comment on that though? Because I think that the way the floor area ratio is calculated is also balanced out by the building department's review of the project during any planning review as well. And they're, checking to see that it complies with the CBC. And it could be as simple as saying that you have a basement where there's the requirements for how much of it is above grade and how much of it is below grade. And, that hasn't changed. That I can see is the same as what it was before. So then the room is not a habitable space if it doesn't have a window of a particular size to provide the ventilation required to meet the California building code. And, that's simply a window, and you can't have a sleeping space without having an exit window in the event of, a fire. So I feel like this is like exactly like the kind of balancing act between planning and building department that takes place when, the planning is saying you can do this if it complies with the California building code. So I again, I think that item is a good clarification. In other words, you can't create a space without a window.
Right. But you could have a light well and, an
Well, that would
egress
be a
window.
window. Yeah. That would be a window.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner. Did anyone, other commissioner have any other comments? Okay, if no one has any additional comments on discussion items, can I have a motion to approve the recommendation?
Sure. I will motion to recommend to the City Council adoption of an ordinance to amend the zoning code as follows. Chapter 27.04 definitions to remove curb level and clarify floor area. Chapter 27.64 off-street parking and loading to clarify on-street loading provisions and site plan and architectural review SPAR provisions. Chapter 27.71 landscape for planning applications to clarify tree provisions. Chapter 27.78 variants to clarify tree provisions, and Title 27 zoning code to update all references to the California building code.
I'll second.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, Mary, can we have a voice vote, please?
Chair Maldonado,
Yes.
Vice Chair Williams,
Yes.
Commissioner Ebnetter,
Yes.
Commissioner Nugent,
Yes.
Commissioner Patel.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes 5-0. So we'll move to the next item, which is reports and announcements. Seth?
Thank you, Chair Maldonado. So there was, I wanted to provide an overview of the upcoming meeting so the commission has an idea of what's on tap. So for our first meeting in November, let me pull up the agenda here. We have one item slated, which is a study session for a 5-story mixed-use project at 435 East 3rd Avenue. So that's scheduled for your meeting on November 9th. And then looking at the meeting on November 23rd, we are looking for a study session for a multifamily residential project at 222 South Fremont Avenue. So it looks like we have one item slated for each of your November meetings, once on the 9th and the other one on the 23rd. And then the other question, I know Chair Maldonado will be unable to attend both of the November meetings, so I wanted to confirm with the other commissioners that we would have a quorum of at least 3 commissioners present for both of those meetings, so we know that we can hold those meetings, or if we need to reschedule.
You there?
I'll be there.
I'll be there.
I will also be in attendance.
Excellent. Well, looks like we've got 2 meetings then for November. And then I know Vice Chair Williams was not at our last meeting, but I know we had discussed the idea of study sessions if we have multiple items on an agenda being at 5:30. I know I just wanted to loop her in for any additional feedback that we might have on that. As we discussed, it wouldn't be something we would look at until after the first of the year, but it's at the commissioner's discretion, the commission's discretion if we pursue this, and we would definitely look to provide ample notice of at least a month, if not 2 months, so you would have the ability to plan your schedule accordingly. But just wanted to tee it up if there was any other thoughts or comments as we move forward, and we can continue to discuss it if need be.
Do you want any comments now or?
Yeah, any feedback or thoughts you have on it moving forward for staff, or a hard no or hard or just this would be similar to the study session model that the council does before their meetings.
I will just say that I mean, for me, I can be flexible if I have enough time in advance. It's certainly feasible for me personally, but I don't think it's ideal to go to 5:30 for lots of people. We're either, I mean, maybe we're not commuting yet, but maybe someday we'll be commuting again. I don't know. Or, there's kids or dinner or, activities or homework or whatever. So I'm not sure that 5:30 is the best option for people, but it is something that sounds like it would be noticed well in advance, and it would be occasional, probably not very often would that occur.
Yeah, so I mean, like for both our November meetings, each one just has one item and they're both study sessions. So in that instance, yeah, it wouldn't make sense to do early. We would just hold it at our regular 7 p.m. start time.
Yeah.
So through the chair, part of the equation to me is that, if and when we go back to in-person meetings, will there be a hybrid component to that where people will not have to travel to City Hall to, participate in the discussion remotely? And I don't know if the city has started to figure out what the next phase of public meetings are going to look like.
Perfect. Well, thank you for that feedback. And I think it's a good discussion topic to continue to have as we move forward. And when an opportunity arises, we'll definitely give you ample notice. And then we can kind of, afterwards, when that time comes, we can also talk it through and see if that was an appropriate model that met the needs of the public as well as the commission. And then the only other thing to announce, I believe you're already aware of it, but just to keep it on your radar, is that on November 1st at 5:30, the council will be holding a study session on the Planning Commission's role and with regard to setting policy. The staff report or the agenda report for that will be published at the end of the week, but definitely would encourage everyone on the commission to attend if possible, or definitely watch the video if you're unable to attend, and then we'll see kind of what discussion topics come out of that study session.
Through the chair, I have a question. At our last meeting, you mentioned that there would be a joint planning commission and city council meeting. Is that the meeting you were talking about, or is that a different agenda item?
No, this is just a study session for the city council to discuss the planning commission's role. The joint study session, which will be focused around our housing element, will be scheduled in January.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. That is all I have for this evening.
Okay, thank you, Zach. Do we also want to encourage other members of the commission if they would like to put their name in the bucket to be on the general plan? I believe, do you know when the deadline is for planning commission members to fill the spots on the general plan subcommittee?
Yes, so that is still open. I don't know that there's a deadline necessarily. I know that the council will take it up, I would imagine, at one of their upcoming meetings. As our next general plan subcommittee or GPS meeting will be scheduled, I believe, in February of 22. So we'll want to get that spot filled. 2 commissioners have expressed interest, but anyone else on the commission is definitely encouraged if you're interested as well. And then our city clerk will follow up with you with more information.
Thank you, Zach. Is there any other reports or announcements from the commissioners? Okay, so I will close the meeting at 8:44. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you. Have a good night.